that there are multiple ways. It was authentic for him, and my way is authentic for me, and your way is authentic for you. And one way is not the only way. So be yourself, share your own self, your own truth, your own authenticity. Don't try and just regurgitate somebody else's stuff.
Biz Buds. You're listening to Biz Buds. Super authentic, actionable advice.
We're going to open the kimono and show you what's inside.
I'm scared to see inside Mike's kimono.
Hey, it's Mike and Tom with Biz Buds.
If you like geeking out over business, marketing, and entrepreneurship, this is the podcast for you.
Welcome back to Biz Buds, all you Biz Buddies. We're so grateful to have you here today. Thanks for coming back to the show. Tom Ross, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling pretty terrified by your radio voice.
I'm trying.
It sounds suspiciously like Carol Baskin from Tiger King. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
Hey. Welcome back, all you cool cats and kittens. We are excited to talk to you about animals and animal abuse today on the Biz Buds Podcast. What do you think of that? Money in the bank right there, baby. Money in the bank.
You're a man of many talents. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about People Skills 101 today on the Biz Buds Podcast. We're excited about this topic, and I know we've touched on it a lot in pieces as we've chatted about relationship marketing, finding customers, interview skills, and things like that. So we've touched on people skills, but we thought it would be good to dedicate an entire episode right to people skills and give you just a core list of things that will help you improve your relationships with other people, improve your first reaction from people, the first reaction that they have from you, to become more likable, to become somebody more charismatic. I think that all these things are the things that we want to touch on in this podcast to help you improve your people skills.
Love it. We toyed with calling this episode How to Become as Unbelievably Charismatic as Mike Janda.
And then we thought it would be an impossible task. And so we would just call it People Skills. We're going to call it How to Be Like Tom Ross because that's more achievable for people. So I think we're going to go with it.
Less arrogant.
Okay. Yeah. That's all right. Just kidding.
So Mike, I think you said you'd like to tennis match the whole thing. So we do our little roundup at the end of each episode. We're kind of going to try and do a whole episode of just back and forth, quick fire tips. So if you ever wanted to have a notepad at the ready, dear listener, this is the episode to have that notepad ready.
Totally agree. And in fact, I'm trying to get my notepad ready as I knock everything off my desk. We just moved yesterday. Shout out to everybody who's following me on my stories. And I haven't been posting any content forever because we've been in the throngs of packing and moving. And I got my little office space set up just enough to do this show this morning. But I'm in a scramble, and we're gonna still make this a good episode. We are, all of you Biz Buddy listeners.
For all of Mike's followers on Instagram, which include me, he's obviously stopped posting any kind of freelance content.
My mom follows me too. It's Tom and my mom.
Me and your mom. We're very tight like that. But yeah, your Instagram, it's kind of turned from a freelance repository of all this genius advice more into like MTV Cribs.
Yeah, is that what it is?
There's no content apart from you showing off your new fancy house on your stories.
I'm very sensitive, and I've said this to some people who tell me that they want me to send pictures of my house. I'm like, you know what? I'm really sensitive on what I share because I know that there are a lot of people that live in more challenging conditions than I do, and this is sincere. And so don't laugh. It's not. I'm not trying to humble brag, but I don't want to go and brag my life out there. So I'm super sensitive to that.
The irony that this is about people skills.
I didn't mean to humble brag. I'm not trying to humble brag.
No, most people are in more challenging conditions than Mike.
No, you know what? There's always a bigger fish. So,
True. All
all
right.
right.
Shall we kick things off?
Hopefully we cut that segment out. But if not, honestly, now I feel bad. Honestly, I'm just a grateful human being. I'll just say that.
Too easy to tease.
I can't even talk my way out of this ridicule that Tom is inflicting upon me right now.
I'm liking it. You look uncomfortable. All right, let's jump in. What people skills have you got up your sleeve?
Well,
today,
man, I
Mr.
just
Janda?
did like most of the talking here. So why don't you kick us off with one of your favorite skills that makes you a better person, more charismatic?
All right. So being the kind of rap aficionado that I am, I'm going to throw out a Lil Dicky quote to kick us off.
Oh boy. Okay.
Because I think that's a strong point to start with. He did this song. I can't even remember the name of the song now, but he did a song with Snoop Dogg. And it's kind of like this bantering between them, but in rap form. And in one line, he's basically saying like real recognizes real, right? Because the whole premise is, well, he's kind of nerdy and white and awkward, but he can really rap. And he's saying to Snoop Dogg, like, it doesn't matter that I'm a nerd because, you know, real recognizes real. And it's kind of like authenticity recognizes authenticity. We don't all have to be the same and have the same character. For me, this massively fits into people skills because I see people that have read a book on people skills and they're trying to be someone else. They're trying to be the author. They're trying to mimic it down to a T, and it starts feeling awkward and robotic. And so as much as, yes, we should proactively try and improve our people skills, I actually think letting your authenticity shine through is a great thing. And we've talked about this with interviews and job hires. I've hired people that were coming across nervous as shit in the interview, and they were shaking and they were a bit awkward, but also their truth shone through. And I thought they seem like a real good person. And they're being upfront about the fact that they're nervous. I would rather hire that slightly nervous, awkward, but lovely person.
Yeah.
Where I believe them, compared to someone who's super slick, but you can see they're putting on a bit of a front and a bit of an act.
I am with you on that. It's authenticity we've talked a lot about as well. We talked about it in our Instagram episodes and things of just being you, being real, sharing who you are. Don't be afraid to do it. And I'm with you on that. I hired a lot of people who were nervous in an interview. They showed their insecurity and their fear of the situation, but I hired them because they weren't afraid to be themselves. And that's one thing that I love too about that concept is that you are your biggest unique differentiator. There's nobody else in the world like you. And I have a brother who's a lot like me, the Birdhouse Magician, who says that when he listens to my content, he's like, man, I say it the exact same way. I say it the same phrases and everything and the same hand gestures and stuff.
Intonation.
Yeah, all of that is, but they're completely different. We're authentically different people. And, so I think that that's a great piece of advice to start out with this is just be you, be real, and don't be afraid to share that with other people in personal settings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it feels awkward otherwise.
Yeah.
When you're being disingenuous.
Yeah, and you can smell it, man. You can smell it on people, not literally smell it. Do they use that phrasing in the UK? You can smell it on people when they're being disingenuous.
I know we're going kind of more quick fire today, but just to give you a super quick example of this in action, I always want to make it actionable. Jacob Cass, our mutual friend, invited me to be a guest expert for his coaching group last night. And I jumped on and I was saying, oh, guys, if I'm a bit out of breath, I was just trying to get a quick workout in before this because I hadn't worked out today.
Yeah.
And so this shows my terrible level of fitness that I'm out of breath right now during the pandemic. And then I answered some questions and someone drilled me on like, how do I, charge as much as I possibly can for the client kind of thing. And I gave some tips, but equally I said, to be honest, I'm probably not the best character for this. I've sat in a seminar with Christo speaking after me in Birmingham where he, broke down how to like almost aggressively push prices as high as they could possibly go. And I was like, I'm not the best person at that. Like, I'm a people pleaser, and I feel a bit awkward doing that. And so I tend to undercharge. And actually how I circumvent that is I try and jack up demand as much as possible so that it forces my hand and I have no choice but to increase my prices, because demand is so great and everyone can see that I have no choice. That's not the best way to do it, but that's my way. And I would rather give that answer rather than me trying to like mimic what I heard Chris say in that seminar, because that's his truth. It's not mine.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. We could riff on that a lot, because I'm a lot like you on that piece, but Chris built a really successful agency with those kinds of strategies. I built a really successful agency with an alternate strategy. I didn't try and go for the jack up the prices and things like that. I tried to
for the record,
provide
I'm
value.
not saying that in a bad way.
No. Like, I'm just saying that there are multiple ways. It was authentic for him, and my way is authentic for me, and your way is authentic for you. And one way is not the only way. So be yourself, share your own self, your own truth, your own authenticity. Don't try and just regurgitate somebody else's stuff. I tell people when they read a book, when I read any book, I'm looking for like 2 or 3 gems in the book. Out of the 300-page book, 200 or 300-page book, I'm looking for 2 or 3 concepts that I can extract out of that work for me, which means that 197 of the things in the book don't apply for me right now. And that's okay. So we're kind of getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but it all goes down to the thing of be authentic to you, be real who you are. Don't try and be somebody else. All right. I'm gonna fire a couple quick ones. The first one, and I say this a lot, and sometimes I think you tease me about it, but man, smile at people. Smile when you meet people. Practice your smile in the mirror. Don't be afraid to smile. And I do it by nature now, but I looked at pictures. We were just packing up our entire house and found boxes of old pictures and stuff. And I look at pictures 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and I wasn't smiley like Janda back then. This is something that I've adapted through practice and conscious effort of just smiling. And a smile makes you so much more approachable. It's that, that initial first reaction somebody has of you. If it's that you're smiling at them, it makes them smile back. And there's some study about how many muscles have to be used to make you frown versus how many muscles have to be used to make you smile. And it's like way less. Like, it's harder for you to frown in your life. It's harder for you to do that than it is to naturally smile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's great. And feeding off of that, laugh as well. Not in a maniacal Joker movie inappropriate way.
Yeah.
But it's pretty good.
That was pretty good.
And the Oscar goes to. But yeah, like some of the most charismatic people or your favorite people to be around, they laugh a lot. And honestly, this probably shows my narcissism, but some of my favorite people to be around
are just like you.
They crack up quite easily. And you're like, man, I feel great. I feel hilarious today. Right.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it in a fake way or a needy way. They're just kind of quite full of life and open to doing that.
We have a couple group chat people, Rachel, who is all into the jokey videos, teasy stuff, and Jackie, who also is just friendly and smiley and jokey and laughy. And I think that those two people stand out to me of the Biz Buddies that message with us pretty frequently. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, just open yourself up to that.
Yeah.
I think everyone's so serious. And in office situations in particular, people are very serious because they're in work mode. Mm-hmm. And so actually, if you just show a bit of a glimmer of life, it's such an effective way to stand out in that professional scenario, because people are maybe a bit more at ease doing it with their close friends down the pub or whatever.
Yeah.
But in an office scenario, just being smiley, laughing at other people's jokes, opening yourself up in that kind of way is huge.
Yeah. It's good. All right. What's the next one you got?
The posture, right? And I don't know if you have the expression out there, I don't want to teach anyone to suck eggs. Like Mike said, some of this stuff might be a bit remedial, but I think it's worth touching on.
You know what? I think like in the 70s, you would say suck an egg. I think that was a phrase back then, but I haven't heard it in a long time, man.
I'm bringing it back, man.
Oh, it's good. It's
so
good.
I can't remember where I heard this tip. But
what does it even mean? Is it crude?
No. It just means like I don't want to teach you something that is so obvious you already know it. So I'm kind of just like patronizing you by schooling something that you're already well familiar with. Okay. So with posture, this thing stayed with me from years ago, where it's imagine that there is a bit of wire or string that's just come out of the sky and it's attached to the top of your head and it's just kind of helping support it. And when you're walking around, kind of feel like that. So not like it's yanking on your head and like stretching your neck out awkwardly, but don't be like hunched over. Because I used to think like posture came from what I'm doing with my shoulders. I got to walk awkwardly and push them back. Simply like if you just kind of, feel like the top of your head's being very, very slightly lifted up, everything else follows.
Kind of like this.
And not in like, that's spot on. But yeah, like that for me has been quite a small but useful action point over the years.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so somebody's pulling your head up, not your chin, your chin.
Like the center of the top of your head. Yeah. It's like just slightly pulled up with this sky wire that's hanging down.
I like it. Okay, I want to shout something out here because I thought I would say this at the start, but I forgot. While we're talking about these different ideas on how to improve your people skills, pick one. This is your assignment. Pick one and then practice it tomorrow. So if it's smile or if it's your posture and Tom's head getting pulled up trick, pick that and practice it throughout the day. Be conscious about that one thing. This is how you can improve your people skills over time. You pick one thing each day and you work on it. And then over time, it by nature, by practice, by habit, becomes part of how you naturally operate. Okay, I like that one, the posture tip. Here's my next one. My next one is call people by their first name. This is such an important one. And I'll tell you, I don't think I ever shared my Will Smith story on this podcast. I did share it on a podcast once. Did I share?
We do so much content. I can't remember what.
I think I shared it on a collab podcast. But anyway, I met Will Smith on the beach, and I'll tell the full story at some point, or maybe you heard it on a collab podcast that we did. I want to say it was on the one we did with the Just Branding boys, Matt and Jacob, that we talked about it. Anyway, we met Will Smith on the beach, and I took my two older boys up, and we went to meet him, and I introduced him. At first I said, "Hey, Will, can we get a picture with you?" And he said, "Absolutely." And then I introduced him to my sons. I said, "Hey, this is Max." And Will Smith reached out and shook Max's hand and said, "Nice to meet you, Max," and said Max's first name. And then I said, "Hey, and this is Mason." And he said, "Nice to meet you, Mason." And I said, "I'm Mike." And he said, "Hey, I'm nice to meet you, Mike. Thanks for coming up," or whatever he said relating to that. But he used our first names. And it made such a difference. And when he did it, I was like, man, this is so spot on, right out of the handbook of charisma. And
okay,
Will
so
Smith.
Let's pause for a sec.
Yeah,
imagine you go, "This is my dear son Mason," and he just goes, "Hey."
Exactly.
Like, what's the difference, right?
Yeah, such a huge difference. So he took the time to use that skill of calling him by his first name, and I bet he
smiled, that charismatic devil.
Oh, I'm sure he smiled. He smiled, he joked, he laughed, all of the things that we're talking about. I mean, he is the embodiment of charisma. And a lot of it is natural for him, but I would not be surprised if he had a great mom that taught him good people skills. growing up. So anyway, so we had this great experience with him. We took our picture, and it was a life highlight moment. But what I want to emphasize is calling people by their first name. And then there are a couple people on the Instagram community that do a great job of this. James Martin, and this is the little trick that he does, and also Mario, I'm the monk, does this little trick. So James Martin, what does he call Mike Janda? Do you know?
Rooney.
Janda Rooney. Janda Rooney. He gives me a little nickname, and what he calls you, like Tom Rossio or something like that.
Tommy Rossio.
Tommy Rossio. And then I'm the monk. Mario calls me Dr. J. So every time he messages me or voice messages me or writes me something, it's Dr. J. And those
now you're like, I got a cool nickname.
It is. It's a cool nickname. And it's such a little charismatic little trick that you can do. Give somebody a little nickname. Call them by their first initial. I do that a lot, not intentionally. I just want it to be familiar and friendly. So when I message somebody and their name is, Magdalena, I call them, hey, M, how are you doing? I just put the initial, and it makes it just friendly and loose and light of relationship. And it's such a great, I don't want to call it a trick, because I'm sincere in my affection for these people, but it's a way to show that to them, that you esteem them as a friend enough to call them by their first name at least, or give them a little nickname of some kind.
Yeah, super smart. I like that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm taking this back to like an office professional environment. Man, does that stand out. Like, most people are so useless that, in fact, I'm going to take this to my next tip. Be a walking, talking CRM. Okay, so CRM stands for Customer Relationship Manager. It's normally some kind of system or database where you can track customer details. This is a kind of way of remembering. I have a terrible memory, and I'm sure some people listening are like, okay, Mike and Tom, this is good advice, but I got a terrible memory. I used my notes file on my phone because I am terrible with names and stuff like that. So I had like our cleaner in the office, Richard. I was like, Richard Cleaner. I had that on my phone because I didn't want to see him and be like, hello, sorry, I forget your name. So several times I would take a glance because I was like, yeah, of course it's Richard. So I'd be like, hey, Richard, how you doing?
Yeah.
Right. Made a big difference. And so I'd take notes, and some of them had terrible descriptions. So I'm like, tool guy, that's his name, that kind of thing, until it sunk in. So, I kind of had this like very remedial CRM on my phone. And I've even done that to like remember little things about people, not in a creepy way, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy that's like super into guitar as well. Because if I had a great memory, amazing. Some people can do this naturally, but I have to kind of train myself and remind myself. And it's nice to do, because the average person in an office just walks past, hey, you're right. Hey, you're right, Pierce. How's it going, mate? Good weekend. Like, any gigs recently? Yeah. Because I remember he's in a band. Nice. We're chatting about that. Cool. See you later. Smile.
Yeah.
Right? It's night and day, the difference.
But even better if you walk by him and say, what's up, P? And then ask him those things. So
you can't get away with that kind of uncivilized display in England,
in the UK. You guys are way so posh.
You would receive a verbal lambasting for that kind of behavior over here, mate.
Okay. Well, I would be able to pull it off, I think. I'm confident enough in my people skills to pull it off. But seriously, you distill it down to a friendlier vibe, friendlier energy, and what you call somebody is so critical to that. So at least use their first name. Consider a friendly nickname level thing if that is authentic to you. It's authentic to James Martin. I mean, he was calling me Janda Rooney before we ever even had our very first talk together. It was just, he's so authentic in his personality that it was okay for him. So
in our office, I used to play every voice note I got from him during the day so the whole team could hear it.
Yeah.
because it just made me smile and laugh every time.
Yeah.
And they'd all be like, who is that dude on your Instagram? And he'd be
he's
like,
so good.
what's up, Tommy Rossio?
Yeah.
And like launch into this diatribe. I was like, I freaking love this guy.
Yeah. And it makes such a difference. Okay, that's the end game. I freaking love this guy. That's the end game. And so much of it comes from just natural charisma and doing these things by nature, the things that we're talking here, that you can practice and improve in your life and become more like that. Okay. Whose turn is it? Your turn?
No, it's your turn. I just went.
I thought I just did call them by their first name. That was mine. You're
and
on
then
the
I
next
did
one.
CRM.
Oh, geez. That was a tip? Okay. All right. Here's the next one. Give a sincere compliment. Give a sincere compliment. And before I jump into this one, I forgot to mention something about calling people by their first name. Man, don't be afraid to ask them what their name is. Even if you've known them for a few weeks and you're like, I can't remember it, and it feels awkward to ask, get over it. Ask anyway. Say, oh, I'm so sorry. Remind me of your name again. Just like that. I've done that so many times to remember somebody's name after I had forgotten it. So don't be afraid to ask it. And don't be afraid to ask it at the start either. When you very first meet somebody, if they don't tell you their name, ask them so that you can. And then when they tell you their name, say, okay, well, it was so nice talking to you, Sally. Remind me of your name again. Oh, it's Sally. Oh, it was so nice talking to you, Sally. There, you just used their name right back to them right out of the gate. Okay, that was a little tip. That doesn't count as my tip because the next one was give a sincere compliment. And this Tom does so well. You look around when you meet somebody or you're in somebody's office or you meet somebody in a restaurant or wherever out on the street, look for something that you can compliment, but make it sincere. Hey, I love your shoes. I love your bag. I love your jacket. Oh, this is a cool texture or whatever. Something about them, give a sincere compliment. Don't make it up, but give a sincere compliment. And what I like about this too is it helps you look at people with a more positive lens. You meet somebody and you're always looking for, what is it that I like about this person? Hey, you got a great smile. Hey, I like your purse or whatever. I mean, it can be anything, but look for a way to give a sincere compliment.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Be assertively humble and vulnerable would be my next one. This is kind of just what maps to my character, but I am finding myself naturally leaning into this more and more. And I just think it's a good way to be. So when I say vulnerable and humble and that kind of thing, don't try and be the big shot all the time. You can be apologetic. You can be shy, like I say before. You can be nervous even. But the assertive bit is that you're doing it on your terms and you're not taking it to a kind of negative extreme. So what you're not doing is being needy or clingy or like painfully awkward or making the other person feel uncomfortable. But you can open yourself up on your terms. And to give an example of this, to make it actionable, there was something that I dropped the ball on recently, and it was a bit of an oversight because I've had so much on. And unfortunately, that made someone that I know feel a bit crappy. And like I'd put them out, basically. I hadn't dealt with the situation in the right way, and not through any kind of malice, but more like, oh, damn, I completely took my eye off the ball there and I made them feel kind of crappy. And as a people pleaser, someone that really cares about people, that's like the most painful thing in the world to me. So I went and talked to them and I apologized. And I just went, hey, do you mind if I have a word? Like, I just want to talk to you because this is the situation that's happened. And I want to apologize. And I feel really crappy about this. And I take full responsibility. This shouldn't have happened. I totally understand how that probably has made you feel. And I wanted to clear the air. I wanted to ensure things were good and just say, I genuinely appreciate you a ton. You're always looking out for us. You're the last person I would ever want to offend or kind of treat badly. So I hope that we're okay. And they said, look, it was a bit crappy at the time, but it's so much about how you deal with it. is the most important thing. And I really appreciate this. And we're 100% good. And so what I've done there is I'm not trying to be the big guy who's calling the shots. I'm actually opening myself up quite a bit and being like, yeah, I screwed up. I'm sorry. These are quite like vulnerable, humble things, right? But you're doing it in a way where actually you're kind of controlling that situation and being like, let's address this. Here's what I'm bringing. Let's sort this out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that person's not going to feel like, oh, they're a clingy, apologetic freak. It's like, okay, no, they're coming to me and being upfront and direct and, you know, to my face about this.
Yeah. I had an experience with this. It's great advice. I had an experience with this with a client. Actually, I had a bunch of experiences with this with clients. One was a huge deal that blew up. And, but I'll tell you the story I share with a smaller deal. I had an employee who had, managed a project pretty poorly and the quality was not good. And I wasn't involved in it at all. And then I had this employee quit and left my company, and I'm left holding the bag of poo. And that's a phrase you would understand in the UK, right? Use that. It's way too crude. You would never say it that way. You would say like holding the bag of refuse or something, right? It would be much more posh. Posh is my word today. Okay, so I'm standing there holding the bag of refuse, and the client comes to the office, and I say to the client, "I'm so sorry." I didn't even know anything about. I hadn't been involved in this project, but I said, "I'm so sorry. So and so has left the company. I saw the work that the team had done for this project, and it is not at all up to the quality that we deliver here. And we're in kind of a mess here, and I would love to talk about how we make this right." And the client leans back in his chair, and he gives a big sigh of relief, like, "I'm so glad to hear you say that, because we were coming in here thinking we were going to have to convince you as to why this was bad. And I've been there. I own a business. I've had employees do a bad job for me, and I've had to go and handle it exactly the way you're handling it right now." And so we talked about that. Now all of a sudden we were talking on the same level. We both thought that the work was bad and we needed to make it right. And we talked through that. But because I was vulnerable, because I was open about my own disappointment in the work that had been done from my company, the client all of a sudden was no longer defensive or attacking in their mindset, because that's the way they came into the office. They thought they were going to have to attack and convince. And it put us all on the nice, even playing field, and we were able to rectify the situation and produce better quality work after that. So vulnerability. Don't be afraid to share where you are with clients or your employees when something messes up or you stick your foot in your mouth and you say something wrong. Don't be afraid to fess up and fix it.
So I had another case earlier this week. Actually, I debated sharing this, but I will for full, transparency. With my company, a mass communication went out to about 500 people that we partner with and work with. And it basically, 2 communications went out. One was accurate and the other one had inaccurate data in, which confused all of these people. And they're like, what's going on? Like, this is, super confusing. And I got my hopes up there and that's not right, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a bit of a mess. And we were getting loads of people coming back, querying it. And straight away, I was really proud of how the team dealt with it. So they were kind of fielding these emails. I was like, while you're doing that, I'm going to jump on and record a video apology right now, immediately. So this was within an hour or two of the whole thing starting to blow up. So I just sat in my office here and I went, hey, like, you're getting this video. I'm sure you've seen what's happening. I'm going to tell you exactly what's happened. And I explained exactly what went wrong. And I was like, here's what we're doing to fix this. Here's the situation. You can reach out, literally, like, you're getting this video in an email. but hit respond to this, reply to this email if you've got any questions, any residual worries, even though it's fixed. If you're concerned about anything, let us know and we're going to have the answers for you. And we sent that out, and we just got this wave of positivity back, being like, man, this is why I love you guys. This was so well handled. Like, you know, this is why I respect you. Oh yeah, stuff happens like this in my business sometimes too. I just appreciate how you dealt with it. Like dozens and dozens of replies start coming back, where we actually have a closer bond than before anything screwed up. And it wasn't like the worst screw up ever, but it was just a bit confusing and inconvenient for people. It didn't matter. I was like, we still handle things this way. And it's not something I have to do often, but I've probably done this 4 times, maybe, in like the 7 years we've been doing business. And I always jump on a video and just kind of bare my soul and tell them absolutely everything that's happening and what's being done, and open up that line of communication. And I can't remember what it was, but like 2 years into business, it was actually like quite a big deal. It was like not ideal what had happened. And I did that, and we ended up better off than before the screw up happened. Like legitimately, people had a deeper affinity for us because of how we handled the screw up than before it happened.
It's awesome. Okay. So the takeaway there is, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and be authentically vulnerable, I think is a good way to phrase it. All right. That was your point. Is it my turn?
It is.
Okay. Let's talk about eye contact. Eye contact is so important in your relationship. That's a good one. Tom just gave me the Google eyes. Those were the like the Looney Tunes eyes, where they come bugging out of your head. But don't be afraid to make eye contact with people. It shows confidence in you, that you have confidence in yourself, and it's the eyes are the windows to the soul. I just made that up.
No, you didn't.
I know. Just kidding.
That's a thing.
The eyes are the window. The eyes are the windows to the soul. It lets people get inside of you and feel your authenticity. And now, what's important is, don't make it like serial killer stare down eye contact. These are eye contact.
Soft.
That's the 1 second, 2 second eye contact kind of a thing. You're not staring them down, but keep that eye contact while you're talking, but don't make them get weirded out by it and stuff. Just practice it. And one of the things that I loved came out of, I think it was in the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss, where he talked about building confidence in your people skills. And he gave the recommendation of, while you're out and about, start making eye contact with strangers to practice. Now, again, this is not serial killer, Jack the Ripper eye contact stuff. I'm trying to resonate with the London thing. Jack the Ripper, wasn't he London dude? Yeah. Okay. So it's not that kind of eye contact. It's not that kind of eye contact. It's eye contact and practice on strangers while you're walking around. You're walking down the street. A little glance of eye contact and a head nod is a great way to just practice your social skills and being charismatic.
So for all the listeners out there, what they're taking away from this is they want to be walking around the street, burst out laughing hysterically at strangers, stare at them, and then apologize.
Yeah, that's the takeaway.
Okay.
We hope you've enjoyed episode 29 of the Biz Buds Podcast. And we're confident that you're going to have some great experiences as you apply this advice.
I think we actually are coming up on time. So just to kind of wrap up what we're saying, I think it's about trying to encapsulate all of these tips, but in a way that is authentic to you. But you can be you, and you can slowly evolve them, because a lot of this stuff, I've always been me my whole life, but a lot of this stuff was not very natural for me. And now it is just through practice. It doesn't mean that I'm being disingenuous to myself. It just means that I've kind of worked on these particular skill sets the same way I worked on freaking learning how to drive a car or use Photoshop. I develop it, work on it. It's so key. And it's going to serve you so well in not just business, but life.
Yeah, it's a great summation. That's a big word for me. It's a great summation of this episode. It's the same for me. My people skills have been practiced over time. It's not all just natural. And I've talked about being, an insecure kid while I was growing up. It wasn't until kind of my high school years that I started to be a little more confident in things. But when I was a kid, I still remember it now. Not being outgoing and not being charismatic and not being what I've worked hard to become now. I'm not saying that I'm the most charismatic person in the world, Tom. Before you jump in and start trying to make me look like I'm arrogant. But it's practice.
That's a big word.
What's the word?
Braggadocious.
I'm going to have to look it up. I don't know what that means. Anyway, so practice makes perfect on anything, and you can practice people skills and you can improve them. Start with some of the ones we've talked about here. Lots of books to read. I've done content on these kinds of things as well. And model the people who you admire the most and what they do. Kind of dissect what they do. I mentioned James Martin, for example, and his nickname thing. Dissect it because it makes you charismatic.
You know what? Like we haven't covered that many, but 10 or something fundamentals today.
Yeah.
And the beauty is we could give you another 100 micro tips. The beauty of these fundamentals is so few people do them and do them well that you genuinely will be in the top 5 to 10% at least by just doing these basics.
Yeah.
It is staggering to me how poor people's people skills are, and often manners and all these things, which, you either get bored up having or you work on. Most people don't prioritize learning them. They don't care about developing that skill set. It is honestly incredible to me if you walk into any average office, how poor most people are at these things. It is one of the easiest ways to break through and stand out. And it's something that anyone can learn for free. For me, that makes it a no-brainer. Literally note down these 10 points, put them to work, practice them, and you're in the top 10% like that.
Love it. Okay. Well, thank you, Biz Buddies, for listening to this episode of the Biz Buds Podcast. Tom and I have... Wait, let me go back. Tommy Rossio and I have enjoyed our chat with you. This is Janda Rooney signing off in the Biz Buds Podcast.
So, ironically, your impersonation of James is probably your strongest
accent
you've ever done.
It was. I'm going to be freaking a Brit pretty soon.
I know. Honorary, right here.
Honorary. See, look at that. I'm like a parrot.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We appreciate every single one of you. This podcast is starting to grow as well. We were just having a little, collective pat on the back before we hit record. The numbers are looking very good. It means more and more listeners are showing up each week, telling their friends. So please keep spreading the word. We hope that you're enjoying the show, and it just means the world that you're here with us. So thank you, and we will see you next week.